here and register for door prizes. We'll be running door prizes all week long, and then the grand prize will be given away on Friday at the Yazoo City Witch. That one. Okay, so this is day 2 of our first ever Folklore Week, and I'm so happy you guys are here and supporting our new endeavor here. Remember that we also have True Crime Week every year and Children's Lit Week. So we've always got a lot of things happening here in the library. Y'all come on in if you're coming for the Cryptids talk. And go ahead and sign in for door prize. We are so glad you guys are here. And yesterday we did have a presentation on the Headless Horseman by our own Dr. Lisa Florshak. She did a great job. Who was here yesterday? Yay, we have returning people. Good. Good. I learned a lot. I thought yesterday was really informative. That's always been one of my favorite stories. In fact, I went home and I watched the cartoon again. So today we have another one of my good friends. The first half of the week is my best work friends doing this for me. And then the other half are people I just found. No, I'm kidding. No, this is Professor Korey Davis, and he is our resident social and psych professor. He's awesome, student favorite over here. He is just an amazing professor. He has been here 7 years. He has a bachelor's degree in social and psych from Tech, master's degree in psych from Arkansas Tech, and a master's degree in sociology from A-State. And he's also a coach, a winning coach. So
I try, yeah, yes, it's hard.
Yes. So we are very glad to have him here, and he's going to put a different spin on cryptids. I love to hear him talk, and he doesn't always say this, but I love to hear him talk about this kind of stuff. So I knew he would be absolutely perfect for this, because he's got a lot of cool things to say about this kind of unknown. Are you going to talk about your project you did at Tech?
Yeah, I might bring that up.
I want you to, because that's amazing. Okay, so he's super cool, guys. Please give him a round of applause.
All right, to start, we have called this Cryptids of Arkansas. I want to start off by saying I am no way an expert in any of this. I maybe knew 2 of these before doing this. That'd be the Fount Monster, and I'd heard about the Heber Springs one just because it's around this area, but other ones I had no idea about. So just keep that in mind. I will, even though this is about cryptids, you're going to learn about sociology and psychology a little bit as well. That's just part of it. So kind of to start off here, just to give you a background of myself a little bit. I had very odd parents. So especially my mom. Like, to be honest, my mom throughout my life was into Wiccan at some point in time. She was probably not very religious, and that's because my great-granddad was a church builder out in London, and that was her grandpa, so I would imagine she swayed a little bit from that. My stepdad and both my regular or real dad's parents were Catholic, so I've got superstition to the max built into me, whether it's the Catholic superstition. And then 2, like part of my family is Native American, so there's a lot of superstition that comes with that. Like I was told very early on as a kid, taking pictures, looking at mirrors, things like that, had ramifications, stuff like that. So I think this kind of led me down kind of an interest into some of this stuff. Cultural influences, I kind of talked about. I'm a 90s kid, so I was very much indoctrinated by the X-Files. That show, Erie, Indiana, it was one of the best shows ever. It wasn't on very long, but it was a very good show. Read Goosebumps, all that stuff. So it just kind of got inundated. And a lot of X-Files shows have cryptids in there. Like it's less about aliens sometimes. Movies and books. I think like the movies back in the 90s, we had a lot of alien stuff, a lot of stuff over Bigfoot. And then 2, like growing up, I used to live in Washington State, which that state is huge on Bigfoot. I remember going as a kid to see some of the museums, and some of them were like half filled with ash because they're real close to Mount St. Helens. But that was a big thing culturally up there. Things like Ghostbusters, things of that nature kind of led me into parapsychology and a little interest in that, which is If you've seen the Ghostbusters, those are parapsychologists. So like when you watch these ghost hunter shows and they've got these little gadgets and stuff like that, that kind of comes from parapsychology. Degree in sociology. So just like psychology that has many theories, when you are in grad school, they're going to force you to kind of pick a lineage or theory there. Psych, it was kind of developmental. In Soc, I kind of fell towards symbolic interactionism because my past life as a sous chef, just a musician, but symbolic interactionism is all about culture. And so it's all about the way we put meaning into things, and it's more the smaller theory. It kind of breeds well into psych and soc. With that background in social sciences, I have, unlike my wife, who's all quantitative, I have an affinity for qualitative research. I love sitting down, talking to people, learning things. I love numbers. I understand the importance of statistics and all that. But to me, especially as symbolic interactionism occurs or is, especially when we get into ethnography and phenomenology. And so really in social sciences, we have this term ethnography, which is just an in-depth view of someone, like a situation usually. Usually when we talk about sociology, we're looking at like cases of poverty, things, single parenthood. Like you can ascertain stuff from data, but you're not going to really understand what that family's going through until you go sit with them and ask questions, or you're like a fly on the wall. And that's kind of what ethnography is. Now, that being said, I'm going to tie that into kind of phenomenology and this, because a lot of the accounts and narratives we get over this or ufology stuff, that technically is ethnography. You're sitting down and talking to someone and doing a very structured interview. So even though it's loosely pseudoscience, there are scientific principles being used there. Phenomenology. So this is one of those tough words here. And I kind of wanted to talk about this because I'll give you the definition. So it's just a philosophical study and movement largely associated with the earliest 20th century that seeks to objectively investigate subjective info. So in itself, it's an oxymoron. So we're trying to objectively understand subjective things. So in phenomenology, like one of the biggest things we learn about is consciousness. Like, where's it at? Where's it at in your head? We don't really know. We know it exists. Just like another example would be the self-fulfilling prophecy, self-defeating prophecies, or the placebo effect. I think we can all agree in here the placebo effect works. I think we can all agree none of us can explain how it actually works. And so that's kind of falls into phenomenology. So it's this objective look at stuff that's probably outside the bounds of objective material there. So let's look at cryptozoology. So cryptozoology is the study of and dissemination of information about animals that are not accepted as existed by mainstream science. So it's not going to be something a biologist is going to be teaching us in class. Animals listed, I kind of talked about Sasquatch, Loch Ness Monster. What are some of y'all are already familiar with besides those? What is it? Unicorns? What was that? Snoffus. I think those probably have, what is it? The Mothman, yes. We'll talk about that later too. Like I kind of alluded to, this is a pseudoscience, but loosely it has a scientific method built into it. And I think that's just their way of justifying it a little bit. Other fields associated are like ufology. We talked about parapsychology already, astrology, and ghost hunting. Doing research on this, I kind of knew this to a certain extent too, but many cultures have their own cryptid legends, and we'll talk about a little bit of that moving forward, about how this is kind of woven into our mythology and folklore too as well. Lastly, they talk about the advent of photography, TV, and the internet has ushered in a new era for cryptozoology. Whether it's conclusively trying to find evidence, or probably now it's more like AI twisting things and making humor out of it. All right, so let's get into some sociology here. We are doing an educational talk. So functionalism is one of the three main theories of sociology. You've got conflict theory and you've got symbolic interactionism, like we talked about earlier. For a functionalist, the main thing there are institutions, and if there's institutions, they want to know the function of those institutions. So when we talk about the function of something, how is it helping human beings? And that's what we're talking about. When you talk about dysfunctions all day, they're looking at how this is actually helping, whether we're talking about the institution of marriage, family, education. These all have positive functions for us in society. So the ones here are entertainment. So if you think of like, there's a movie, The Legend of Boggy Creek. Yes, it's about the fat monster. That had an entertainment function. That town in general has probably gotten some sort of tourism. So I would imagine, like when we talk about ufology, like places in New Mexico and stuff have had all sorts of tourism built in because of this. The education function of this goes back to probably what we talk about in sociology when we're just talking about folklore and really mythology, is that we're passing norms, values, beliefs, customs, wisdom, sometimes our history, because before we wrote it down, it was done through oral tradition. So that kind of built into these things. Teaches children and others through indirect learning. And that is a psych principle there, Vygotsky. The validation of culture. So here we get into terms like, we'll talk about the zeitgeist later and subcultures, but like if this was 1985 and I was doing this speech, or we were talking about aliens whatsoever, I would imagine the opinion from people is going to be rather negative. It's 2025, but I don't think people bat an eye when we're talking about aliens or any of that stuff anymore. So it's the fact that it's been validated in culture is the fact that we don't kind of look down upon people having opinions or anything about this stuff as much as we did in the past. Social control goes back to what we were talking about with education. So the passing of values, morals, beliefs, maybe what we talk about, parables, things of that nature. And so that helps just to pass and instill the values that we want. I'm going to try to tie this into modern day folklore loosely here. So cryptozoology as modern day folklore, it's built from past and contemporary folklore. It has a lot of indigenous ties. Like we get to the Gyasticus in a minute. It looks like a bird. It's a big bird. That comes from the thunderbird, which is an indigenous or Native American theme. We talk about mythology, from the Kraken to the Loch Ness Monster. There's a lot of similarities between just something being in the ocean or in the deeps. And we'll kind of get to some of this stuff later. And then there are cultural connections there. And we talk about the culture wheel. So if we're talking about cryptozoology or folklore in general, that's a knowledge and story. It's composed of language. It is built of traditions and rituals. Has values built into it. It helps to build the greater community, which we'll kind of talk about later, and it is part of the arts here. So it encompasses most of this culture wheel. It is culturally significant now as we look at TV and pop culture. Subgroups, when we get into sociology, we talk about cultures here. So subgroups would be people just in general that believe this stuff, that are part of a community there. And that's the importance sociologically of things, is that when we get into these subgroups, it's where we get communion. So we find people with interests. It helps to bring the group together, etc. The zeitgeist. So when we use this term in class a lot, I get people that right off the bat don't understand it, but you do. All that is what's in pop culture. It's just a fancy German word. So what is popular right now in time, that's what we'd call the zeitgeist. So is this stuff popular, been popularized since the 90s? I mean, it's all over TV, everywhere. Mapping the unknown. I kind of wanted to allude to another sociologist here, Max Weber, who, coming out of the 1800s into the 1900s, had a theory over rationalization of society. And that's kind of maybe why we have an interest in this, is he would say that because we turned to science and logic so much over the last 150 years, it has taken away the mysteries of life. And so we are looking for things to kind of explain the unknown beyond science and logic there, a certain extent. All right, embodying cultural anxieties. And so Bigfoot, and I had pulled this up from one of the resources here. They did a good job of trying to explain maybe why we believe in these things to a certain extent. So Bigfoot, they said the hairy ape-like cryptid of the North American wilderness is often interpreted as a manifestation of anxieties about human identity, evolution, and humanity's place in the natural world. Loch Ness Monster embodies anxieties about the limits of scientific knowledge and the decline of magic and wonder in a modern world dominated by empirical evidence. And that's where we go back to the rationalization I was talking about. Chupacabra, the contemporary cryptid, embodies anxieties related to borderlands, immigration, and diseases. Mothman, the Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, is an example of a modern cryptid that reflects anxieties related to the Cold War, industrialization, and environmental concerns. And the Jersey Devil, infamous cryptid from the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, illustrates older pre-industrial anxieties related to social and religious conflict and the fear of a wild, untamed landscape. So it's really just kind of trying to explain why we had these anxieties about the situation or the environment we're in. The reaction against mainstream science would be the next thing. And that's kind of where I was alluding to Weber, is this may be just a blowback because we've become so over-rational and everything has to be explained to a certainty that we have left all the awe, wonder, and mystery out of life here. And then I talked about processing environmental guilt. Now, there are key differences that are on here between. So this isn't exactly modern day folklore. It's just a loose tie here. Modern day folklore rejects the supernatural, whereas cryptozoology is going to accept all the supernatural it can right there. Folklore tends to use a veneer of science. Is this where I'm not an expert in folklore? I do believe there's a certain author out there that has some sort of framework for how all mythology is kind of supposed to go. I can't think of that off the top of my head. But that in itself places a methodology on it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good job. Media and the internet. And so this is actually affecting both things. So now this does help to spread modern day folklore, real folklore, etc. When it comes to cryptozoology, it's also doing the same thing. Kind of a push-pull factor here we talk about a lot of times in class, especially with the media and the internet. Origins of Arkansas cryptids. So as I alluded to, a lot of this stuff has Native American indigenous roots. When we talk about the Thunderbird, technically, if we want to go French to kind of indigenous down in Louisiana, what would be the one down there? Starts with an R, the Rougarou. And so these are all kind of customs built from old stories. You know, talk about shapeshifters in Native American mythology, Chupacabra. Many of these kind of Native American mythologies contain what we would call cryptids, or they would call either spirit animals, hybrids, etc. And then that leads right into early settler stories. So these are probably getting blended more often than we would like to think here, especially due to the areas. And so it could have just been repackaged from indigenous stories. Could be ways to explain just unknown things to early settlers. I think a lot of these people are from Europe. They probably haven't seen half the animals that are on this continent. And so explaining some of that stuff could have been explained away through cryptids, etc. And just things they weren't accustomed to. Looking through locality tells, in Arkansas in general, we have a ton of these associated with the Ozark Mountains, just because that's our big mountainous region. A lot of unexplained things in any mountains, like the Appalachians, etc. Falk monster there, swamp areas. Once again, I mean, I'm from Russellville. We think we have an alligator at Bonadilla there. So, I mean, right here we could have just odd things in swamps that we don't understand. Lakes and rivers, we'll get to kind of the Heber Springs one, the panther there. I think there's another lake monster brought up. And then family traditions. So really they talk about like the Ford family is the big family from that movie, The Legend of Boggy Creek. But also they talk about the Woods and the Sedgas family from that area, who also had accounts in 1971 of the same kind of issue. It just wasn't as impactful as the Ford families. Town traditions. So this gets woven into, like we were talking about, tourism. Some of what just, like, no one even knows about Fouke, Arkansas, if it's really, that's not some place that we're all just astounding to go to. They are known because of the cryptozoology that comes from that area. I'm sure there are other things there, but most people are going to point to that. And so these towns and areas are going to get intertwined in these stories. And it's going to become kind of a cultural attaché for these areas. So we'll kind of go over these one at a time. We got the Fouke monster here. I may be mispronouncing these. Giasticidus here, which is going to be kind of like the thunderbird. Gollywampus, which this is actually pertinent. I live in Conway, so that should give you some segue right there to something. The Goro right there, Heber Springs water panther, the Minishuka, Ozark howler, skeeteroo, snoffus, and the White River monster. Some of these are pretty local to this area. So, and of course, as a teacher, I made a big chart for everyone here, so we can get it all broken down here. So the Fouke monster description here: it's a hairy ape-like creature, resides in the swampy sulfur river bottoms, anywhere between 7 to 10 feet in size and up to 800 pounds. Origins there is Miller County or Fouke, Arkansas. Had a huge impact on tourism there. There's been that mainstream movie. It's kind of become the identity of that town to a certain extent. Beyond that, there's been some TV shows. I think there was even Unsolved Mysteries done in there at some point in time. There's been a couple of those in Arkansas, actually. And encounters here, I've talked about the Ford family in 1971. Now, I wanted to point to a lot of this stuff here, but the state has actually validated a lot of these sites as well in governmental affairs. So we actually have a Fouke Monster Refuge, which was started in 1973. Arkansas Game and Fish Commission there. So Giasticidus here was the big bird from the previous one. It's the 50-foot long feathered creature. Origin there is kind of in the Ozarks, highlands of Arkansas. And this very much ties to that thunderbird mythology because it's basically the same creature to a certain extent. Now, the things I did find about this is much like the Mothman. People said this could signal like natural disasters, or if you see one, it's a bad omen, technically. The Gollywampus. So this is that half dog, half cat creature, usually seen after dark or before dawn. Origins come from all over the country, to be honest with you. So Appalachia there, Ozarks here in Arkansas, could come from Cherokee folklore, but this is where we get the Wampus cats right there, is from that. So it's been culturally ingrained into Conway at that point in time. They said it could be a protector from demons. The Goro is the large reptilian mammalian creature, about 20 feet long, 2 tusks, row of short horns or spikes, webbed feet, and a bladed tail. Name comes from its roar. 1897 article in the Searcy County Caves. That's where they found that. Supposedly in 1897, Elbert Smithy published an article about how William Miller and a posse tracked and killed one. We have a few published articles about that. And then very local would be your Heber Springs water panther here, which is a cross between a Sasquatch and a puma. Beast-like, lives on both land and underwater. This one does have a lot of indigenous or Native American ties back to the Ojibwe or Shawnee Indians there. Theirs is kind of associated with danger and drowning, kind of explain why people were drowned. They may have been pulled under water, etc. Cultural impact, it's still an urban legend today. Has inspired various forms of media and board games, especially in that area. Encounters have occurred in the Heber Springs and north central Arkansas area for centuries. And then it's kind of got an omen thing to it. So seeing this may lead to drowning, etc., or something bad happening. The last chart there, So the Minashunka here, cave-dwelling, blood-sucking, dog-like creature, about 20 pounds with 4 pointed teeth. Typically found in the caves in the Ozark, but similar to the vampire bat of South and Central America. So we're looking at origins there. They kind of assume that there's a lot of crossover with those two right there, and especially the chupacabra, because it also sucks blood as well. Widely known in northern Arkansas and Douglas County. And once again, this could be an omen of something bad or a harbinger of death here. Ozark howler, large black, shaggy-like, bear panther, long curled horns, glowing red eyes. Legends date back to the 1800s, the start of statehood here. With a story from Daniel Boone to sites in the 50s, early 2000s, and 2010s. Tied to older legends from the Appalachian Mountains and Ozark regions concerning animals and omens. And seeing this again could be a death omen. So a lot of these you don't want to see at all. Skeeteroo is also what we call the snipe. So if anyone tried to get you to go snipe hunting a long time ago, you were hunting skeeteroos there. You just didn't realize it. So you weren't going to be successful whatsoever. So it looks like a giant insect. We get a lot of ties back to North American mythology, Native American mythology too. Found a book though, that Yarns of the Big Woods. It's actually mentioned in there. And just like most of these, trouble occurs when they are around there. Snoffus. It's a white deer with wings and huge antlers, with antlers being branches of the dogwood tree. From old Ozark mountain lore, possibly tied to Celtic and Old English folklore. I think that one would be as close to the unicorn as we're getting, like they're very much similar. In Vance Randolph's We Always Lie to Strangers, so it does have a cultural impact in terms of being in a novel. And the first sighting leads to delight, second summons fear, and third leads to death. So it has a lineage of things that occur there with it. And lastly, very local here, would be the White River Monster. This is a gray-skinned, white and long with a spiny back. Some say it has a horn. If they don't say it has a horn, it probably to them resembles what we'd say like the Loch Ness Monster. Sightings started in 1915, more frequent in 1937. It is a local celebrity in the area. Whitey is apparently found in novelty stores. You can buy souvenirs. In the Newport Christmas Parade, too. I spelled that wrong. Another odd thing, Senate Resolution 23 in 1973 to protect the creature. So in two of these, you have governmental laws to kind of protect what they believe is there. So that is it. Y'all have any questions or anything? Try to do my best. I'm not an expert, but nothing. I think in terms of Bigfoot, there is like a cultural difference all over the world, and so it may be, I don't know, could be, or some version. It could be a version in Washington State. It's the Yeti in Asia. So yeah. It's just cultural things we share sometimes. It's kind of the folklore aspect of it. Yeah. Could be. I don't know. Definitely. Oh, neat. That's good. It's a big thing in Arkansas, really in areas where there's probably more mountains. There tends to be a lot more of these stories. And I think that's just, you're isolated out there. You know, sometimes, you know, if we're going to, on the bounds that maybe this isn't existing on why someone would maybe think it would, I mean, these are explanations for the unknowns, kind of what we were getting at. So we like to know why. We like to know how. It's just human nature. So. I mean, that substantiates it right there to me. So.
There's something on in 73.
Yeah, it was in the 70s. I mean, that was probably the highlight of cryptozoology, maybe. High times of it.
Question?
No.
Really good interpretation. I can show a copy of that chart if you need it. So, yeah. you to identify a monster.
Yes.
So,
And plenty of links too. I'll make sure she has the PowerPoint if y'all need it. Thank y'all very much.
thank you so much. Okay.